All right, perfect. So I will go live in about 10 seconds and start. Good evening, everyone. My name is Abhishek Jain, and I'm pleased to invite you all to today's session on volunteering. What is it, and why should design students try it out? This session forms a part of a collaboration between Plan Together and CRY, which is a social impact driven collaboration to ameliorate the culture of volunteerism through an experience based teaching and learning model. Towards the end of this session, we will also be having a Q&A session, for which I would request you all to put your questions in the live chat box. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Anubhav, who is currently working as a filmmaker with TVF with more than 50 short films to his credit. He's an ex-CRY volunteer and also a design alumna from IIT Bombay. We also have Veronica, who is currently working as the senior manager for CRY's volunteer action team for the North region. In today's session, they will be speaking about the importance of volunteering and its utility for design students and graduates. They will also cover the who, the what, the how, the when, and the where of volunteering with an organization like CRY. I would now like to hand it over to Anubhav and Veronica to begin this session.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here and so happy to be speaking to all of you. My name, like Abhishek just said, is Veronica, and I'm so thrilled to have all of you here and to have Anuba, who had worked with us back in the summer of 2019. What I will do is I'll just give you a quick overview of what CRY is, what we've been doing, and how does volunteering, fit into the CRY model of the rights-based work that we are doing. So my name is Veronica. I work with the volunteer action team at CRY. I'm the senior manager with the volunteer action team in the North region. But CRY as an organization has, for the last 43 years, been working for the most underprivileged children in the country. We work in various areas such as nutrition, education, health, protection. And what we essentially do is we're trying to reach out to the last child to ensure that their basic rights are given to them. Now, within CRY, there are so many teams that are doing a lot of fantastic work, and CRY is, working in most parts of the country. Though the team that I am most excited about is the team that Anubhav was also a part of, which is the Volunteer Action Team. Now, I head the Volunteer Action Team in the North region, and what we do is we work with young people just like Anubhav, and some of them even younger. You'll be happy to know that my youngest volunteer at the moment is 7, and my oldest volunteer is 89. So we have a massive base of almost 5,000 volunteers who are currently working at CRY. These are active volunteers who are not just working during the weekends, but also in the weekdays, sometimes working in spaces like Google, doing day jobs, coming to CRY projects in the evenings and working, sometimes in schools, coming back from schools and working. So various volunteers coming from various spaces. The one thing that we've always believed at CRY is that you don't have to be special to do special. My youngest volunteer wears these shoes which have these roller skates under them. So when she comes into the organization, everybody's like, hold on, and she skates into the organization. And last summer, in the middle of the pandemic, all she did was bake cookies, bake cupcakes, and every time they'd have like a movie screening in their family, they do that very often. She'd say, I've baked all of this. All of you will only get access to all of these goodies I've made if you donate to the organization that I have, pledged my support to. She last year raised almost 1 lakh. Volunteers at CRY, these are young volunteers who have a basic pocket money of 100 200 rupees. These are volunteers who last year almost raised a crore. And this is just young people who survive on what, 2,000 rupees of salary. Volunteers at CRY have helped build toilets in the middle of the pandemic, have gone to the remotest parts of the country to do, things that all of us probably wouldn't even have thought of. And which is what's very exciting for me, because when Anubhav had come into the organization, he was one of the most silent people who walked into the organization. All he said was, you know what, I don't want to talk to anybody, just give me my work. I'm going to sit in the corner and do and make stuff. You will get a link of all the amazing merchandise he's made. Anubhav, you'll be happy to know you made that in 2019. We're still using that. Last to last week, we did an event with children from Rajasthan, and we took the pens that you had designed to them, and they were thrilled to see what those pens were. So more power to all of my volunteers. My job is to just stand there, guide them, and watch the magic that they do. And with that, I'd like to hand over the spotlight to Anuba and get him to talk about what he did at CRY, how he did what he did, and maybe talk about a little bit about how all of this work that he did at CRY changed so much in the work that he's doing currently. Anubhav, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Also, I never said that I won't talk to anyone and just give. You should actually talk to everyone. That's how networking works, and it's very essential if you go out into the real world to work, volunteer, intern, whatever. So, to begin with, I'm Anuba. Hi, everyone. And I'm a recent graduate from IDC School of Design at IIT Bombay. I did my bachelor's in design from there, followed by master's, specializing in communication design. Although in the last 5 years as a designer, I have also worked with different disciplines like game design, product design, animation, comics, storyboard, a lot of narrative based stuff. Although my specialization is filmmaking, and currently I'm working at TVF as a writer, director, and cinematographer. So I worked as an intern at CRY after my second year of bachelor's, where I developed several merchandise for the patrons and went for field research with volunteer teachers, among other things. Following the wonderful and enlightening experience as an intern, I continued to work as a volunteer with CRY for another couple years. And you can have a look at some of the things that I designed and in the link in the description. Best viewed on a smartphone. So, when and why do you start volunteering or interning anywhere at all? The question often comes before sort of dipping your toes into the cold real world, as some of our mentors would say, is that, am I ready for it? Surely it's a leap from being a student to actually working somewhere. So how do you decide? So my suggestion is start with an NGO, for like CRY, for example, because thankfully it's not so cold out there compared to corporates, and you get a very warm, welcoming, and certainly very educational experience. And that's how my experience was, especially thanks to the understanding and motivating mentors like Sohini ma'am and Veronica ma'am. So surely go out there and volunteer whenever you can, and that's how you learn and grow. And now, when to decide that you're ready for it exactly? So as soon as you've developed the basic skills in your preferred discipline of design, be it interaction design, that's UI UX, or product design, even mobility, anything at all, just the essential design sense, knowledge, and understanding of softwares. Once you know that, you're basically ready to go out there, explore, volunteer, and intern. But apart from that, what you'll need the most is the willingness to learn, explore, and grow. So, working with CRY, I learned the importance of teamwork and the dynamics of working in a group to make something that will actually go out there and make a difference, uh, hopefully. In contrast to working in group projects as a student, which will just be graded and then they'll be in some archive. So that's why it's important, because then you start seeing things from a user perspective, uh, a consumer perspective, than just a student, a designer. And that's also an essential thing when you are a designer, because you are not designing for yourself. That's the difference between art and design, something that is taught to us in our very first year when doing the course, what is art and what is design. So design is something you're making not for yourself. It is communicating emotion, it is communicating uh, a utility, fulfilling a need, but it is only design, and especially it is innovation only when it's going out there and reaching the masses. So, working as a volunteer or intern, you'll get to experience working on projects which will have an impact on the outside world as well. And apart from that, obviously, with this warm experience, you would have developed then the skill set to more smoothly transition into corporates, jobs, uh, and thankfully now that the pandemic is over, you'll have a more real experience of what it is like to work in an office, um, and actually meeting with people, your teammates, uh, ideating, developing, brainstorming with them to reach common goals. So that's how interning and volunteering helps. Obviously, it does add to your CV as well, because especially if you're working with an NGO like Cry, because their reach is unparalleled, and I believe the experience that you will get from working at an NGO, it it cannot com- be competed with by any experience at a corporate firm or uh, a company which is hell bent on, well, earning money rather than making a difference in the world. So that's why I think you should go out and start volunteering, interning, and to begin with, choose NGOs, and even later on, that is kind of a personal preference, but you can take that. Uh, there's a suggestion: work on things that will make a difference for humanity rather than just some rich people. So that's about it. And now, if anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thanks a lot for sharing that, Anuba. I think before we break into the Q&A itself, Veronica, would you like to just elaborate a little bit more on how a prospective student or graduate can actually apply for a volunteership
Apply.
and when they can
Yeah.
apply
So
and
you
what would the general procedure for that be?
what would the general procedure be? So, you can apply at any time. In fact, like I was saying, you can be as young as somebody in school, and you can be as old as somebody who's probably retired and now has a little bit of time. So, in that sense, our profile of volunteers, we're always looking forward to people joining the movement because we really need a lot of hands on deck for the work that we're doing. When can you apply? I would say you'll have to first think about how much time you have in hand. For example, I believe when Anubhav had applied to us, he had applied to us during his summer break. He had a little break from his college. That's when he had applied. There are a lot of volunteers who don't have the privilege of a summer break. A lot of volunteers who are working in corporates or in schools where they probably don't have the privilege because they're either traveling or they have big projects coming up even during their school time. That's keeping that in mind, we also have the volunteering program. So for volunteering is relatively flexible, meaning you can work during the weekends, you can work for an hour on a Saturday, you can say I'm only available on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the evenings, you can say I'm only available on Sundays, but you'll have to be consistent with your commitment. That's the only thing that we sort of request for volunteering, you can give us anything between 3 months, 4 months. For internship, we say even if you give us, let's say, a month, we say you give us 5 days a week in that month. And internships are otherwise a little bit more intensive because you get a mentor, like Anubhav was sharing. You get a mentor who's going to be specialized. So Anubhav was working with the branding and communications team. There are different profiles, and Cry again is not very particular about you being, let's say, social work students or law graduates or whatever. We're very open because we require, let's say, if you're an MBA student or if you're a design student or if you're somebody who's a social work student or a media student, you will be placed with the right team who will be mentoring you and also ensuring that while you contribute to the organization, we in our own ways also try and help you in your growth. I remember, just like Anubhav was saying, while he was mostly stationed in the office and he was working on design related work, he was also sent to the field where he could get a direct hands-on, experience of the children that he is sort of designing all of this for. So uh, so that's the sort of commitment that we require. How can you apply? It's simple. Just go to www.try.org. There's a volunteer section and there's an internship section. You just have to figure out which region you'd like to volunteer for example, we have try volunteering projects in Bangalore, in Chennai, in Calcutta, in Bombay, Pune, Delhi, Chandigarh, Kashmir. So you can figure out which region your volunteering is most suited for, and you can volunteer. All you have to do is just go to the website and apply. And we also have online volunteering options. So let's say if you are not based in any of the cities where physical work is happening, you can also volunteer online, which also gives us the scope of volunteers who are, let's say, based abroad to also work, even if they're working on a completely different timeline.
Thanks a lot for sharing that, Veronica. And I think my next question is a little bit of a generic question for volunteerism in general. And maybe, Amar, you could also share a little bit of your specific thoughts on why this was relevant to you. When someone's actually going out and applying for a volunteership or going out and looking for an organization where they could just volunteer their time, what are some of the considerations that you think they should have in their mind when they're making the decision about who should they be volunteering with, and also why exactly should they be volunteering itself? And I'm asking this question because a lot of students, when they're going out and looking for volunteerships, they're kind of worried about whether this will have the same impact on their profile or on their CV in terms of any kind of professional value. So what are both of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Anubhav, would you like to go first?
Sure, ma'am. So definitely, it will have a great impact on your CV, your portfolio, when you go for jobs and even anywhere else in life. People see that you have worked before, and that is an essential experience. A lot of jobs require that. But more importantly, uh, where exactly to volunteer? Like everyone knows, volunteering and interning is important. Uh, but if you're a designer and you haven't yet decided on which specific field of design you'll go into, like a lot of students these days are a little sad of that, leaving the interested discipline for the one that pays the most, which is currently it's interaction design. 20 years ago it was industrial design, and somewhere in between it was communication. So just because of that recent trends that keep coming, people are leaving onto uh, their passion to go for something that will just support them, put food on their plate. But if you haven't yet decided and you're a young student who's just entering the world of design, I would say work with an NGO for three main reasons. One, you will get a multidisciplinary experience because unlike other companies like, say, Google, Microsoft, uh, Honda, etc., you will get an experience where you can opt to work for several fields of design. Like in Cry, I know some people who created a game, and it was a choice-based web page which turned into a game of how uh, an auto driver would live through the pandemic. And I, for example, created some products, and some other people working with me worked on videos and educational videos. A lot of the volunteers there were teachers. So that multidisciplinary experience of working on projects which will go out and have an impact to the actual consumers will give you a better idea of what you really want to do in the future. Because maybe right now you will choose a profile which will give you money, but 20 years down the line you'll feel like ये क्या गलत ले लिया, and you won't be able to do that for the rest of your life. So that that doesn't happen, go for an NGO for your first volunteering or internship. And the other reason is that you get to interact with interns from different fields. Like at Cry, a lot of the interns were lawyers, and as ma'am said, people who volunteer, some of them are teachers working in schools, some of them are working at Google, and they have such a variety in their backgrounds, that you get the knowledge from different fields, and certainly you network and make connections which are everlasting. And the third most important thing, or the least important, it's up to you, is that after the internship or the volunteering, or maybe the after never comes because you continue volunteering for the rest of your life, and that should ideally be the case. Ultimately, you will feel proud of yourself, not for the money that you made, because money gets spent, but for the work that you did. Because at the end of the day, the work is what will remain, and no one will really remember you for your money. But people will remember कि हाँ यार वो बंदा आया था, उसने अच्छा काम किया था. तो ऐसा होना चाहिए. So that is the reason I think you should opt for volunteering or interning at NGOs to begin with. And after that, once you have decided onto your discipline very firmly, and you're really interested in something, go for it. Just get as much experience as you can before graduating in placements, so that further down the line, it will, one, help you decide on to which company to go into, because several companies have different policies and their style of working, so you will be able to choose. The second, you will have more options open because you will have more experience in your hand. That's it. Over to Veronica.
Yeah, I think Anubhav sort of covered most of what I would have said. Just that, so I've been in the non-profit sector for almost like 10 years. And I have seen the non-profit sector just get more structured and get more systematic over the years. I remember there was a time, probably many years even before I had joined the formal labor force in that sense, where, an NGO would just have 5 people, and 5 people would be doing everything from administrative work to HR to finance and everything. But, we're sitting in 2022 and we're saying, even an organization, like CRY has an HR department, has a finance department, has a branding, media, volunteer action, development support. There are different departments. So non-profits in that sense have become just as structured and just as systematic as, let's say, a profit-making space, like Anuba was saying. And therefore, there's space for everyone. And there are mentors who are most suited for your skills and interests. For example, if you're somebody who's studying business, in my resource generation team, there are only MBA graduates. Or let's say if you are somebody who's studying design or somebody who's in the media space, there are people who are just in the media space who are, going to be your mentors. So in that sense, the one thing that you need to step in if you're stepping into the non-profit sector is to know that the non-profit sector has become a lot more structured and a lot more systematic. And the second is, of course, at CRY, we have a function which is, there are organizations that just do volunteer related work. And then there's an organization as massive as CRY, which just has a team that's there to ensure volunteers are growing, and volunteers are not just contributing, but they're also, learning in that process, learning not just skills, but also, like Anubhav said, socializing, learning, meeting other people, just being in the space at CRY and listening to conversations, all of that. So CRY in that sense is very, very invested. However, the only one thing that I always personally tell volunteers at CRY is, I don't know what your reason to step in is. If your reason to step in is probably that Chotu that you saw washing that car and you're just like, oh no, I feel terrible, I need to do something. Is it that Choti who you saw at a red light? Or is it the fact that you want to go to Harvard in 3 years and you want to build a solid profile and an NGO looks good? Whatever your reason is, I would say if you've stepped in, give it your heart, work with all, work with the passion that everybody at CRY works with, because I have not met one person at CRY who doesn't work with their heart. Of course, and we go all out, even if it means, be it a Sunday, be it, in the middle of, next week, it's 15th of August, and we're working with a union of almost 2,000 auto drivers just to ensure that we have sanitary napkins installed in their autos. And our volunteers are going to be at the field just to do that. It's a long weekend; they could be going to the hills and chilling, but our volunteers are there doing that. What we say at CRY is, we don't need you to be very, very skilled. We just want you to come in with 120% passion, because we don't work with lukewarm. Lukewarm doesn't work for us. So I remember I had a volunteer who had come in to cry. She was a mother of 3 children, and she came in to cry, and she said, I don't know what I can do because I'm just 10th pass. I said, okay, where do you stay? So she told me she stays in Dwarka. She said, I still don't know what to do because I just am very patient and I have 3 children. I said, hold on, did you say you're very patient? Can you help me get admission, get my children admission into this space? And she said, okay, I can try. I said, there are, students who've not got admission, but the only thing that I have to do is I need you to go to the school, understand the documents that are required, and come back again and again to understand if we can get those documents. Now, that is something that somebody as young as Anuba may not have the patience for, because that requires per child doing 10 trips, and we, young people may not have so much of patience. But that amazing, phenomenal young woman, she did that, and those 6 children right now are in, studying in schools when they could probably be at work, just because Pratima existed, right? So what I'm saying is, I don't even need your skill. Just come in with 120%, probably 140% commitment, because that's the only thing we know at TRI, and we will guide you through the rest.
Thanks a lot, both Anuba and Veronica, for sharing that wonderful story. I think it's really useful to flag out that just about anyone can volunteer, and that's what makes it so special. I think my last question for today's session is very specifically it's more of an organization-wide question, Veronica. But I want to understand that as an organization, how exactly do you distinguish between an internship and a volunteership? And what are some of the key differences that I, as an applicant, should keep in mind when I'm trying to make a decision of what's best for me?
So I think one thing that you'll have to keep in mind is how much time that I can give. Anubhav had started as an intern and then moved on to volunteering, because in that month that he had interned with us, he had that entire month. So he was stationed at the CRI office working in the day, and then he'd do like a 9 to 5 shift. If that's not something that you can afford, go for volunteering. Now, after Anubhav had done his complete internship, he moved on to volunteering, and it didn't really matter if he was sitting in the office or wherever he was stationed, because he would, we'd call him up, we'd ask him if he was available, and we'd give him a project, and he'd, happily oblige. That's essentially the one big difference. Internship, we've had interns who work with us for 4 weeks, 2 months. Volunteers, I have volunteers. So I've been with CRI for 7 years. I've had volunteers who've been with CRI for longer than I have been with CRI. I've had volunteers who are with CRI since the last 9 years. I've had volunteers who've said, I joined CRI when I was a school student. Now I'm a working professional. I'm still with CRI because every Sunday I can't not imagine going and meeting the kids and, taking music to them or taking education to them. So the idea is volunteering is relatively flexible. Volunteering you can do even when you're doing anything else. Internship is a little bit more intensive because we require you to work intensively for a certain period of time. You can give in, let's say, 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, whatever you have, but that's mota like the difference between internships and volunteering. For either, you can apply through the website.
Okay, thanks a lot for sharing that, Veronica. So I think that one thing that we would definitely want all of our viewers to remember is that we'll be sharing the links for applying to CRI and also to get to know a little bit more about CRI in the description. And we'll also be sharing links for some of the work that Anuba has done to give you a better idea of what you may get a chance to do when you're volunteering at an organization like CRI. And with that, I think I come to the end of my questions for today's session. And I just want to thank both of you, Anubhav and Veronica,